In defense of the great Pokemon bubble, recently I was sent over a video by a friend. His name is Jeremy, and I'll be honest with you, he sent it to me late at night, maybe 3 nights ago, and I read the title of the video and I just decided to shine it on like it wasn't a big deal. And we had a little bit of a discussion right there, and the very next morning I decided to watch it. And after watching it, I'll be honest with you, it did not sit well with me at all. So here I am today doing something that I've never done before, and I'm creating a commentary video on someone else's video. For full disclosure's sake, yes, I am an investor in Pokemon, but I am also an investor in other pulp culture, collectibles, and other goods. I'm a professional reseller by trade, and I teach other people how to do this as a profession as well. I also do light consulting within the pulp culture collectors category, and I feel it's important to have a voice of reason and a little level of experience within the category to be able to speak proficiently on it. That being said, I am not a prophet, and I am unable to predict what the future will look like next week, next month, or next year. Just like all people who do investing of any type, I am able to see some trends and writing on the wall, and I am deep within the market, and I can see things that, frankly, a lot of other people can't see. And that's why I feel comfortable within that market. Those of you who have not seen this video, it's the looming Pokemon card market crash plus Yu-Gi-Oh! And MTG by Upper Echelon Gamers. And I'll put a link in the description down below. For the sake of fair use as a commentary video, this should fall under that. So if you're watching this Upper Echelon, please don't flag my video. I'd appreciate that. Without further ado, let's get into it. He is a gamer by nature, so he has some gamer footage, but I'm going to probably show it a little bit here and there, and we're going to cover some of the key points on his video. His video is 22 minutes long. I don't know if I'll get through the whole thing or show all of it, but I will not be excluding things I do not feel have relevance with what we're talking about today.
Okay, today I want to dive into the world of collectible card trading and put forth a claim, a bold claim, that we are accelerating into a massive value bubble when it comes to Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic the Gathering pack openings, and the peer-to-peer market that has been exploding as a result of this surging popularity. If you regularly engage with online communities in the realm of Twitch and YouTube, you have probably seen the effects of this already. Pack opening streams and videos have gone absolutely viral in recent months with so much interest, the activity even made it to mainstream media news, after a box of first edition Pokemon cards was about to be purchased by a group of idiot millionaires, and it ended up being opened live on stream, showing that it was a scam live to everyone who was watching. This kind of viral moment led to an even greater hype around the activity, and as the popularity continues unabated, I want to make the case that what we see is a fully formed bubble just waiting to pop. And when it does, a massive number of people currently diving into the hobby will lose a catastrophic amount of value if they can even convert their cards at all. I say this because the context behind a lot of these streams and videos involve pull value. There is a massively popular surge in influencers, YouTubers, Twitch streamers, and now even self-proclaimed millionaires.
I'll pause there for a moment. There are people within all different financial classes investing in this type of commodity. I've seen people who are earning $15,000 a year who are dabbling with it within the financial end of the spectrum. And I've worked with and know of clients in the $1 million, multi-mega $1 million range that are investing within this category. Those of you who've watched any amount of YouTube at all will see content creators like Jake Paul, add a little bit of extra notoriety to the category. But just because someone is a millionaire buying Pokemon does not necessarily make them an idiot. It is another potential asset class for investing your money into. Any commodity that you have that is worth a specific price at one point and then in time goes up in value, that's something that an investor could look at as a potential investing asset. Now, whether or not Pokemon is an actual asset now, it's a little bit debatable. I personally have made a fortune doing Pokemon. I know many other people who have. We've kind of ridden this wave upward, but it is not a fully established market commodity yet. It's not like first edition books or bladed weapons or graded coins or graded currency of that, anything of that nature. This is an emerging market that we're in right now. So don't let the fact that one person who was a millionaire who had one bad buy go down be the reasoning that that we're all fools within this commodity. Yes, there are counterfeits out there. Yes, if you're smart, like this person was, you're able to have the cameras rolling. But the reality is very few of the people who are working within the Pokemon collecting category, and we're talking less than a percent of a percent of a percent, are ever going to even consider pulling the trigger on a $400,000 box. So these types of collectibles, the collectibles within the top 1 to 3% of the collecting market, have no bearing on people like me who are working on the lower end of the market. Think about if you collect knives, for instance. Okay, your best knife might be a $500 knife. You're not going to be owning a $500,000 knife as a knife collector. You can look at it, you can ooh at it, you can ogle at it, but what happens with that commodity has no bearing whatsoever on the knives that you own yourself. If that knife goes up to market and sells for $750,000, your knife isn't automatically worth 50% more because of what happened with that sale. Now, obviously, if you own the exact same commodity, that's a different story.
In order to produce content. And a common thread that you will see repeatedly is a number on their screen, which indicates pull value, and a high emphasis on the is this card worth X, Y, or Z component. There is also a huge emphasis on what...
Now, yes, are we in a bubble? Potentially. And this is where the tricky thing comes into play, is the fact that we cannot for certain peg this as a bubble because we have varying market factors that are going on right now. One of the simplest things to look at is something like supply and demand. Every single morning, I go on to TCG Player and I look at a snapshot, and I'll put one up on screen here, that shows me every single booster box within the $0 to $500 range, which is generally where I work in. I don't work in high value commodities within this market. I work within a lot of the lower stuff because a lot of my clients work within that space as well. It makes it really easy to be able to work with people. But when I look over this snapshot, what I'm seeing is we're actually seeing a dwindling supply. Now, what's actually happening with that supply is kind of hard to say. Are people buying it and keeping it, or people buying it and opening it? But I will get to that part later. To say that we are in a bubble means that the prices are hyperinflated now and that they're going to be coming back down later. But the reality is we don't know what a stable price is on some of these commodities yet. Here in the background, I got a box of Vivid Voltage booster cards. When they first came out, we were comfortably selling them for 90. Okay. Move forward 30 days, they were selling for 100. Move forward another 30 days, I sold a case of 6 last night for $300 each. How much is that booster box worth? Is it 100, 200, or 300? Is it 400, 500, or 600? Where is the bubble? Where does it pop? What is the actual value of these goods? Well, this is where we have to speculate. And I was talking with somebody yesterday or even earlier today, and they were telling me, it's like, well, it's just risk. You know, you're taking on too much risk. And I said, well, that's investing. You have to take on a certain level of risk. Do you want the upside? Yes, we all want the potential to profit. Well, guess what? You're going to have to be willing to deal with a little bit of the backside where you could potentially lose money. If you want stable investments, go invest in CDs or the S&P 500. If you want something a little more sexy and a little exciting, you can play within the pop cultures market. And if you have a complete aversion to risk, don't invest in anything at all and leave it inside your mattress, and you can go ahead and pay the 2.7% inflation that you paid last year for the money that you kept in your drawer and did nothing for you. So, are we in a bubble? Maybe. But because we don't know what these products are actually worth, what the market is willing to fully pay for them, and how much of the product is out there, supply versus demand, we really don't know. These prices could continue to go up, and they could even stabilize at some of these higher prices, or yes, potentially they could come down. But I'll tell you, with the way the market is today, you will see the writing on the wall before anyone completely loses their ass on this commodity.
PSA grade would this be? How much is it worth based on that PSA grade? And there's a very clear link now emphasized by streams like the one I'm about to discuss here in a moment that shows a correlation between money, cards, and relative interest. Now, some of the people who have facilitated this meteoric rise genuinely love the hobby. Someone like Moist Critical, Penguins, Charlie, however you want to refer to him. Someone such as Charlie lights up like a pregnant woman whenever there are packs in the room, and he clearly has an appreciation for the hobby. The value market and peer-to-peer trading network could crash, but it's doubtful he would care in the slightest. I really don't think he would. He does this for him, not for money. At least that's my honest impression, even though he certainly does have value indicators on his streams, and he does evaluate his collection based on monetary price tags. Still, if push came to shove, I believe it's fairly obvious he would not just drop the hobby and attempt to liquidate holdings on the open market. However, as the interest and value continues to grow, the ratio of hobbyists and collectors to flippers and investors becomes skewed. And the further that balance diverges, the more unstable the market becomes at higher and higher prices, and that is where the danger comes from.
Now, this is a point that, yes, does have some valid legs to it, but we have to make some really wild, baseless assumptions about the market of people who are actually opening and working with these cards. Are these people collectors? Are these people hobbyists? Are these people flippers or resellers, as he calls them? Are they in it purely for the finance end of things? There's a lot of different people out there. There's some people, believe it or not, who go to the store and buy Pokemon cards and they enjoy them and they actually play the game. And I run into this often where there's this belief that every single person who touches a Pokemon product is over the age of 30 and they're buying it for the finance end of things. Now, yes, is there a large amount of us out there? Sure. Why the heck not? We'd all like the idea of making an honest buck doing what we did in high school. Okay? There's a certain level of nostalgia factor that comes back when you're online buying, selling, and trading, wheeling and dealing your cards just like you did in high school, and you're looking to make a few bucks. There's people who do it part-time, people who do it full-time, people who do it in more than full-time, and they're heavy investors within the category. But to boil it all the way down and say that pretty much a large portion of these people who are engaging within this activity are pure resellers, pure flippers, speculators, yada, 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 and that the greater fool is going to be the one stuck with the box at the end of the day, it's a little bit wild. And yes, I do understand that breakers do break them with the intent of providing value for their buyers, but there is a direct correlation between the nostalgia factor and seeing a great card that you want, and yes, there is a bit of a lottery element included. We all want to have that scratch-off ticket cash in a $500 win. There's a little bit of a rush that comes along with only spending $10 and getting a great return on your investment. But here's where the other end of the hammer falls, in the sense that as collectors of the hobby, of any card game, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Legend of the Five Rings, Old Mage Knight, Dungeons and Dragon figures, whatever it might be, we all want to know that our stuff is stuff that we like, but we also want it to hold some value. If I was to sell you a pack of cards today for $100, and the moment you got those cards, they were worth $10, you would kind of feel a little bit shafted. You want your goods to retain value. Now, if you're actively playing the game, if you're actively playing Magic the Gathering, you're buying, selling, trading, you're building this great deck, you're looking to win, there's got to be value tied up into it, because at the end of the day, someday, you're going to sell that stuff. Okay, maybe you'll give it to your kids, maybe it'll get inherited, but you're going to get rid of those cards someday. You're not going to be buried with them. And when you do go to get rid of them, what are you going to want? You're going to want a very strong and robust secondary market that has been held up by active players in a community of investors and collectors and breakers and everything to ensure that your goods hold value too. Just because you love a card game doesn't mean that the finance end of things can exist at the exact same time alongside it. And not every person who plays a game cares about finance. Not every person who does pack breaks cares about the money. There are other reasons and motivations behind it. Little Susie at Walmart, finally finding a pack of cards on the shelf that hasn't been scooped up, she doesn't care about the value of the cards. But guess what? A lot of young guys do. We have a great time doing it. And when I was a kid, yeah, I paid for a lot of meals through Pokemon. I had a very poor family, and it was a great way to make money. Now, would I recommend that Timmy go out there and do that again today? Probably not, unless he knows exactly what he's doing, but not everyone does it for that. Little Susie, she's going to have a great time playing with her cards, just looking at them and saving them in a binder. She doesn't care about the finance. And believe it or not, there's millions of people who buy these and don't care about finance.
So why do I say that this has become a clear bubble and is poised on the precipice of a card value collapse that will leave, I don't know at this point, tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of people at a major loss? The answer is multifaceted, but to start with, I want to tell an anecdotal story about supply and demand / volume that will help illustrate my point. A number of years ago, when I was in college, I was just learning how to trade on the open stock market. I had big aspirations and very little relative knowledge, but one day I got convinced by some online articles, silly me, but whatever, to invest into an OTC penny stock. In fact, this thing was a fraction of a penny, and having done well previously in some trades, I was a bit too overenthusiastic and impulsive. I began to buy shares. Now, this was an accumulation period of probably a couple months at least. I couldn't buy all that many at once, but I could place fairly large orders every 2 weeks. And these 60-day orders were slowly filling because I was able to get more and more shares as people offered them up over time. I don't remember how many I had in the end, but it was many millions of shares. It wasn't hundreds or even tens of thousands of dollars or anything like that in relative cost, but it was quite a few thousand that I had saved and earned through previous trades. Here's the important part. The stock had extremely low relative volume. I was buying up what I could with orders that were open for days on end, and I felt good about that, but what I didn't account for is that the volume didn't exist to offload those shares quickly. Weeks went by, and eventually I just stopped buying more because I felt I had enough. The price wasn't really going the way that I wanted. I was actually down, I believe, in the price swings, and they were really big because even tiny little bursts of buying or selling would push the market one way or another. But then my day came. There was, for some reason or another, to this day I have no idea why, there wasn't like a press release or an article or anything. There was, on that day, a larger volume of trades, a lot of buying pressure, and the price per share skyrocketed to like 10 times what I had paid or something like that. When I was finally able to act on this, because I was in college at the time, late morning, maybe early afternoon, it seemed like a clear point where I should sell, so I began to do so. At first, it worked. I was offloading hundreds of thousands of shares at a price far beyond what I had initially paid, but the price started falling. Instead of taking more chunks out of my sell order, the price fell below it and kept dropping. I decided that this was probably my only exit. I just had a bad feeling, and I was still up in total, even if I undercut where the price was currently at while it was falling, so I did, but there just wasn't enough volume anymore. What little trades were happening were sell orders, and they just kept coming. The entire rest of the day went like this until the price was actually below what I had initially paid in the beginning by a lot, and even if I undercut, I still couldn't get rid of my shares because no one wanted to buy them. The next day, I was at a huge loss, somewhere around 40 or 50%. It was a long time ago, I don't remember, only mitigated by what I had barely managed to sell in the very beginning. And the volume was so low, it was painfully obvious I was not going to be able to offload these shares anytime soon. Ultimately, the company went under, and it was a total shareholder wipeout, with me holding the bag. This taught me something I'll never forget, and it was actually a really valuable lesson that is it's probably good it happened to me, but whatever. Something that I see looming on the horizon right now today, and something that should be known when you trade within or define value by a peer-to-peer network where your only actual value held is a function of what, or if, someone else is willing/able to pay for it. That's pretty much a rudimentary statement. In all honesty, basically every single existing market operates that way, but a lot of them have intrinsic value. Oil, gold, corn, etc. have immutable value in the world based on their practical uses. Gold for electronics, oil for transportation, and so on and so forth. That will change in decades and decades, but that's the truth for basically our existing future. Major companies typically offer a product that has an actual application. For instance, in the marijuana industry, even though it may seem like that's not the case to some people, there is pain relief and a whole bunch of other functions. The automobile industry, transportation, on and on the list goes. Even in the purely digital world, you often have something that underpins a kind of baseline value to the stock. It's not unimpeachable. Bad management, debt, and a whole slew of other things can override whatever baseline value there would be or should be. But the idea is there are uses and functions beyond the simple existence of the item. Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh cards, as well as Magic the Gathering and whatever other cards are wrapped up in this booming peer-to-peer economy that we have recently seen, are a bit different than that. The value is predicated heavily on condition. This means you can't really play with the cards or derive entertainment value from them in the traditional intended sense. For the most part, some people do or can or whatever, but for the most part, that's true. And
Before we get into the baseline value of the good, I want to touch base on his anecdote. Long story short, and I'll probably scrub it down for time, he invested a lot of money into the stock market on a penny share that he heard about through an article, and then somehow lost his money on that investment. Shocking, I know. This is the thing with investing. If you're going to go after a risky stock that has low amounts of volume, then yes, you are going to lose money, most likely. Now, if that situation had gone differently, and let's say the company did gain a little bit of traction, and let's say he did end up getting 4 or 5 times his money, because he said he was buying fractional shares, so he's probably buying it, it's probably 100 shares for a penny or something to that effect, which already in its own right is a risky investment. You don't see anyone going out and buying millions of loose energy cards within the Pokemon category. That's not a smart play. Now, if he had gone after a top shelf stock like an Amazon or a Best Buy or a Target or a Tesla or anything for that instance, he would probably have been fine. He probably would have walked away with a profit. If he had gone after that penny stock and made 40 times his money, you'd probably look at it and investing just a little bit differently and maybe wouldn't have gotten a valuable lesson that he ended up getting. You can invest money into the market and get your returns, and you can invest money and get a stable outcome. But making a bad investment into a penny stock and then attributing that to other markets isn't bright. Because if you are going to invest into any market, okay, you have to do your research of that market. You can invest into gold. He talks about gold here. There's a lot of different ways to get gold. You can get loose gold. You can get gold in graded gold in coins. You can get bars of gold. There's a lot of ways to get it, and each one has pros and cons and different expectations for returns on your investment. Okay, you cannot look at one example of one market and then blanket that knowledge across other markets. It's not the brightest thing to do to look at someone else's failure as a metric for whether or not you are going to succeed. You're much better off looking at somebody who is capable and successful within their market and asking, how can I replicate that success? Not how should I mitigate and prepare myself for this failure?
Value to the stock. It's not unimpeachable. Bad management, debt, and a whole slew of other things can override whatever baseline value there would be or should be. But the idea is there are uses and functions beyond the simple existence of the item.
The Pokemon Company does have a product offered. It's a Pokemon trading card game. It's a game that you can play with other people. There is value in that. Now, to boil it down and say, yes, the cardboard itself has no real true value, sure. Okay, that is certainly a valid claim, but I want to stress that there has been collectors markets for decades with commodities that have no real value. Look at comic books. Look at stamps. Okay, yeah, sure, stamp has a face value and a comic book has a face value, but these collector markets are fueled by more than the base of their value. They're fueled by nostalgia, they're fueled by interest, they're fueled by the desire to be a collector, they're fueled by the desire to have things that other people don't have. Okay, a product doesn't necessarily have to have a physical value to be a collector's class or to be something that people covet. You can't look at a $5,000 slabbed, graded, 65 coin and say that its bare minimum value is the value of the gold itself. Sure, but there's other factors to that coin that make it worth what it is actually worth. Look at comic books. Look at stamps. They are just paper, right? But you don't see, your Incredible Hulk 181 being talked about as being just paper, or your Amazing Spider-Man #1 being talked about just paper. There's more to it than that. I want to poke out one more thing here. This isn't something that we've recently seen. These card markets some of them are very established. Magic the Gathering is almost a 30-year-old card game at this point, with individual cards going for upwards of over $100,000, and booster boxes, even something like Third Revised is going for upwards of $15,000 per booster box. Sure, we've seen recent activity being brought to the platform and brought to the category, but these markets have been around for a very long time. This is not something new. This might be new for this gentleman, hearing about the market and hearing about the activity and the volume that's going on. Sure, there's been an uptick. It might be new information for him, but these have been around for a while, and they're working their way into becoming an established market.
The scene are a bit different than that. The value is predicated heavily on condition. This means you can't really play with the cards or derive entertainment value from them in the traditional intended sense.
How do you play with a $10,000 comic book or read a $10,000 comic book? The value is pinned on the condition.
For the most part, some people do or can or whatever, but for the most part, that's true. And a heavy number of people flooding into the market right now are deriving their value or enjoyment exclusively from profiting off of these cards.
Who would have ever thought that a category could come along that you could both make money in and have fun while being within? Heaven forbid that somebody do both of the two. I know so many people that tell me about their favorite. I have some cards here on my desk. I have a Lusamine on my desk. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce her correctly. Lusamine. I have this card on my desk. I think that some of these cards are really neat and really interesting. I even have some really nice secret energies, and I like these. I like collecting these. I like having these, and I even have a graded slab here on my desk as well. I like having certain cards, okay? But I also like the finance end of things. Go figure. And believe it or not, there's some people who buy and sell comic books who also read comic books.
The best example would be a recent $375,000 first edition box transaction. A channel named Dumb Money, which they absolutely deserve as a name, by the way. These guys are dumb. But anyways, a channel named Dumb Money, owned and operated by three confoundingly rich men, bought a Pokemon first edition box from a community member named the Collectibles Guru. A few moments in this stream were particularly telling, and in truth, I'm actually very, very glad this was shown to be a scam live on air, because if it hadn't been, and they had pulled, let's say, a $500,000 Charizard card on their first pack, the amount of money that would have flooded into this hobby would have hit like a tidal wave, and then been subjected to the rampant scam-driven shadow economy that is all too real and thriving beneath the surface. Effectively, had they been successful, even just from a PR perspective, it would have exacerbated every single impending problem I'm about to highlight. Anyways, a few moments here were particularly telling, such as the claim that the Collectibles Guru was extremely nostalgic, but that concept fundamentally changes when he says, "I loved when I would take the card and sell it to someone else for a 70% markup." Not only that, but the Dumb Money investors themselves, and that's an important term here, very important actually, investor, not collector, repeatedly make it obvious that this is about the value side, not the card side, not the enjoyment of the hobby, not the collection building, none of it. I won't devolve into a deeper analysis of why it appears that the
So there's a channel that I watch, and it goes by the name Reserved Investments, and he works with clients at large levels within the pulp culture category, and he has clients who will invest into several $1,000 booster box or $10, $15, $20,000 comics and stuff to that effect. There are people who are millionaires who are simply diversifying their portfolio. And this is another thing that I told Jeremy when he sent me this video. I have a diverse portfolio of goods. All of my money is not parked in Pokemon. I have other action figures. I have other collectible goods. I have the baseline inventory products that I sell every single day on eBay and Amazon. I have other goods. I have physical wealth and liquid wealth as well. You can't put everything in one place. And I'll tell you, there's millionaires out there that are looking for advice as far as where they can park their money. And guess what? I don't care how many millions of dollars you have, Dumb Money, for instance, okay? You still want to show gains on that money. And just because you used to be big into the nostalgia end of things doesn't mean that you can't also be into finance. I know one of the guys that I work with, one of the companies that I work with for Pokemon, the owner of the company, he has stacks of Pokemon shirts that he wears, okay? But guess what? He's probably going to move several $100,000 worth of Pokemon cards over the next 12 months. It's not a crime. You can really be on both sides of the spectrum.
Collectibles Guru blatantly tried to scam these guys out of $375,000, how his story didn't match up, how the contradictions by his own word made it obvious that either he scammed them or the person he got the box from scammed him, and yet he was going to buy 2 more boxes from the same person and then sell them to these same guys, which really, I can't get over this. They deserve that name. Dumb Money. But anyways, the entire thing was just a complete disaster. They had $375,000 worth of cards on the table during their second deal when they finally got a box that wasn't a scam, and this millionaire asshole was going to put them in plastic Ziploc bags. The Collectibles Guru, a supposed expert on all things Pokemon, slides a card face down across the table, which could easily, heavily impact the PSA grading. None of them have plastic penny sleeves, which are a simple must-have when you open even moderately expensive packs, let alone the most expensive Pokemon deal in history. And the hard cases that they do have, that he had in his backpack, the expert just jams the cards in with his finger, which again could easily impact the PSA grading and the value by a tremendous amount with even one single tiny little scratch. There were 3 live streams in total, and the combination of them were painful to watch and infuriating for even the most casual fan of the hobby. Even the guy sitting next to this expert was like, "Are you sure you wanna," as he shoves a multi-$1,000 Charmander, raw dog, into a hard case. I'm not even close to being an expert on these things, and my collections are laughable, but watching this, it hurt my soul. Logan Paul spent $200,000 on a first edition Pokemon box. Dumb Money spent $375,000 on a first edition Pokemon box. Heritage Auctions sent a box off for $360,000, I believe, and these are just the highest profile examples. But the reality is that the investment mentality, the expectation that your investment will mature and become more valuable, and that you open these packs with the intention of having cards graded and priced in based on book value, that mentality is becoming more and more prevalent by the day. So, having established that the peer-to-peer price values for most hobby cards are rising right now, we need to know why that's happening. The biggest reason is COVID-19. COVID-19 might seem like a strange causal factor here, but let me elaborate because it actually makes a lot of sense. The global pandemic has come with a variety of side effects to it, ranging from lockdowns to stimulus checks and unemployment benefits, and the sum total of those factors are directly causing the meteoric rise in collectible trading card value. The reasons are actually pretty straightforward. One, people have shifted spending habits away from a variety of previously common items and services. Less travel, less haircuts, less luxury food spending and dining out, less activities like arcades or movies or what have you, and a whole host of other things that come with that. And this comes in tandem with stimulus money, at least in the United States, and that's where I'm from, though that was admittedly a single instance, as well as hefty unemployment benefits that actually increased, contrary to what many believe, the amount of money a great deal of people were collecting while also spending less with their other activities and staying at home more often. So what replaces all of those gaps in entertainment and activity? Hobbies. An easy comparison would be video games. The sale of video games has been absolutely booming. The gaming industry is doing better than ever because people are bored. People have reallocated their spending habits to now include things that keep them busy from home, and the result is that certain industries take off and others die down. Collectible trading cards with a fusion of nostalgia and potential profit for a large number of spending age adults are a prime, and that's just based on age demographics, like when Pokemon was, new and popular, and Magic the Gathering as well. A lot of the people that were into it back then now are in a position where they can spend a lot of money. They have disposable income. They're the ones receiving the stimulus check and the unemployment benefits, so it fits right in. They are a prime candidate to answer the question, the collectible trading cards are, what do I do now with my time and my money? And the resulting influx of investment, purchases, and interest in the market has been causing a massive price increase almost across the board.
I want to add on to this. He does make some very valid points here in the sense that the extra money is having an impact on the Pokemon card market. But something that he might be really missing out on is that this isn't just the Pokemon card market that has seen increases in volume and increases in baseline prices. This is all collectible commodities across the board. Stamps, coins, books, vintage tickets, posters, any type of collectible class you can think of. Collectible stuffed animals, squishmallows, in particular, Star Wars collectibles, any type of collectible that had a rich and thriving secondary market has seen an uptick in pricing. Part of this is just full on due to inflation. Who would have ever thought when you have a country that spends trillions of dollars cranking out fresh money for people who are actually in need for it, that we would see a uptick in prices as a resulting factor. But yes, there are people who are looking and spending money within this category, some of them coming here for finance, some of them coming here for fun. And yes, it is driving prices up. That is irrefutable. Okay. But all market prices across all sectors are seeing uptick in volume. I've seen upticks in volume in puzzles. Now we're talking jigsaw puzzles. I've sold more than I've ever sold in my life. On average, on eBay, I do anywhere between $60,000 to $100,000 a year in volume with etc. goods. Everything from clothing to toys to collectibles to you name it, consumer goods. I sell it all. But I've seen the average price for puzzles have a massive uptick as well. Beanie Babies are coming back now too. The average sale price throughout 2020 for a Beanie Baby was somewhere in the area of $15 or $16. That's bonkers to me. Is there anything wrong with that? Not really, as long as you're not betting the farm. This is something that I've talked about many times on my channel. I said it is fine to invest. It is fine to dabble within these markets, but don't invest or don't spend, depending on what side of the ball you're on, more than you're willing to lose. No different than going into a casino. Don't gamble what you're not willing to lose. And yes, I am in a position where I stand to benefit from people buying Pokemon cards. If you cannot afford Pokemon cards, don't buy them. Okay? If you're looking to get into this category because you want to make money and you don't have much money to begin with, don't start here. I have clients call me, people who are just trying to figure out how they can make a few extra dollars. And you know what I tell them? I tell them, go to the thrift store. The margins are better. And what do you mean? Every Sunday for the last 2 years, I've been showing off every item that I found at thrift stores. I make tens of thousands of dollars for buying thrift store goods. I use Pokemon as a secondary source of income to my thrifting ventures. I go yard selling, thrifting, and swap meets. But last quarter alone, I made an extra $30,000 due to Pokemon on top of everything else that I made through that quarter as well. There are easier ways to make money, and this is not a racket for everyone. And if you are spending your unemployment, or if you're spending your stimulus check, if you want to spend your stimulus check on it, go for it. Guess what you did? You stimulated the economy. That's kind of what the money is there for. Now, if you're using your unemployment and you're not paying your rent, you're going to go in and put yourself in a doozy. But it doesn't really matter where you spend it, whether you spent it on Pokemon or whether you spent it on something else. That's just plain irresponsibility. But there are a lot of smart people who have a pedigree within this category. Trading cards. I've been trading cards since I was 14 and I'm 35 now. Okay. Certain people are going to do fine. But for every winner, there's going to be losers out there too. But the reality is, those losers on Pokemon would have lost on Magic. They would have lost on Yu-Gi-Oh. They probably would have, lost on resale ventures. People who don't take the time to research markets and they go on hunches and feelings. Even my roommate, and I don't want to say anything horrible about the guy, but I try and talk with him about the investing end of things. I try and talk with him about some of the things that I see within the markets, and he doesn't want to hear it. Okay, he's having fun. He's doing it his way. He's working on super low ASP goods within the Pokemon category, and that's fine. Some of us are going to win, and some of us are going to lose. I told everyone and their mother, buy Vivid Voltage at $90 a box. Some people listened, and guess what? Those clients of mine who have listened have made tens of thousands of dollars. And I've also seen the other side of the ball, people coming back to me a month later asking if they can buy them off me for $160, $170, and I have to tell them no. I tell them there's just too much money for me to sell them that low.
Seems like a great time to jump in, right? Well, maybe not, because COVID-19 will end. We are pushing towards 3 separate vaccines in the United States alone. The efficacy rates are in excess of 95% in some cases. The global pandemic, the lockdowns, and the unemployment benefits and stimulus initiatives will eventually end. And when they do, something like 60% so far of small business closures are permanent. The market will rebound eventually, but the current time and financial freedom for a huge number of people engaging in the hobby will radically change fairly soon. The extra money per week while you sit at home and don't spend as much on dates or kids or leisure or clubbing or whatever it may be will flip. It will invert and become completely inverted.
This is again another wild speculation that the only people who are engaging in this hobby are people who are unemployed or people that are dependent on those checks and dependent on that stimulus. There's many people like myself who are wildly successful through the entire COVID crisis who are working within the Pokemon category. The COVID could end tomorrow and I would still be working within this category. Nothing is going to change. And I hate to say this, the 60% of businesses that close down, you think Gino's sandwich shop, do you think he just lost his business and then later that month said, you know what I'm going to do? With that stimulus money I was given, I think I'm going to go ahead and take a crack at Pokemon. Okay? The people who are losing their businesses are not moving over to Pokemon and dabbling within this market. The people who have lost their businesses have lost quite a bit. And I guarantee you those people are looking at finances in a different perspective. And to assume, this is what's wild, to assume that the only people who are within this market are those who are unemployment is downright insulting. There's many successful people working within the Pokemon card market right now. More than 80% of my clients right now are current business owners. They own a full-time business, some of them making over $200,000 a year, $300,000 a year, and dabble with this market on the side because guess what? They did it in high school and they enjoyed it. That kind of reminds me, Kind of reminds me of another collector's market. Oh man, what was it? Right around, I don't know, the last housing crash, the video game market took off. And we've seen the video game market go crazy over the last, decade? Record highs on sealed product, record highs on graded product. Okay. How come that market isn't going to take a volatile crash the moment that this ends? Or how come that market didn't take a volatile crash last time there was a downturn in the economy? It's because a lot of the people who are dabbling with large amounts of money within this category, the ones in the peer-to-peer collecting category that are propping it up, guess what? We got more money. If Pokemon collapsed tomorrow, I would be okay. Now, if you're in a position where you're saying Pokemon collapsed tomorrow, I'd lose everything I have, you need to start evaluating your position within Pokemon. You need to start shifting some of your assets around, okay? Speak with the mentor. Speak with me. Speak with Reserved Investments. There's great resources out there. Get yourself somebody who can help you diversify your portfolio. But again, it's very insulting to assume that the only people that are within this market are unemployed people collecting money from the government.
For a lot of people, to an extreme. And for others, even worse, it will become a downturn in financial stability owing to the looming recession that we all, globally, are staring down the barrel of. A recession and a financial reevaluation at the middle class level causes a pullback in hobby spending and, most importantly, at a retail investor level, a liquidation of portfolio assets. With Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic the Gathering cards now being viewed as investments, with investor money funneling in at all different levels, driving the prices higher and higher and higher, we will see an equal pullback when the financial winds change, and those cards are pushed back onto the market in order to convert between assets, or even simply use the money for essentials. That conversion puts us at the doorstep of a drastically overinflated peer-to-peer collectible market, where the only way to sell a PSA grade 10 Pokemon card, or whatever it is to directly find a buyer who wants it for the price you wish to get. A price that is currently ridiculously high, causing more and more boxes to be uncovered for that potential reward, and opened and trade hands, and disperse their contents far and wide.
So there's a phrase that I loosely understand, and it's called the greater fool. And my understanding of it is that the last person to buy a good with the intent of selling it for a profit, who is unable to, is actually going to be the greater fool. And the reality is you have to make sure that that person is not you. Okay? So how do I mitigate that risk? Well, whenever I go after speculative buys, things that I'm not super keen on, but I feel that there might be some upside, I make sure I don't spend too much money on it. Okay. Let's say, hypothetically, my Pokemon portfolio is about $100,000 worth of goods. What should my most expensive item be? What should be my most expensive position? It probably shouldn't be anything over maybe $1,000. Okay, if I have a $15,000 or $20,000 card, guess what? I'm taking on a lot of risk that I'm not going to be able to find that next buyer in line for it. But now if I take on products that have an established history of showing stable growth or maintaining value, my risk is going to be less. And secondly, sometimes you have to look at the writing on the wall. Okay, just recently we had a new president come into office. Things are getting shuffled up just a little bit, and you have to evaluate it on a day-by-day basis. Should I start liquidating some of my position onto the open market? These are decisions that you have to make as a investor. Okay. And remember, it's a Warren Buffett quote that buying and selling into the open market does not make you an investor just because you do a lot of volume. Okay. If you buy something at retail and you sell it for retail plus 20%, okay, sure, you're a reseller, but you're not necessarily an investor. I have products from 5 years ago sitting inside this closet right now that I've been waiting and watching appreciate long before COVID was a thing. And many other professional investors and professional collectors/resellers have done the exact same thing. There's a lot more to it than just buying and selling on the internet. You have to have the right acumen for it. You have to make sure you mitigate your risk. If you don't know what you're doing and you have thousands of dollars worth of product, get yourself with a mentor so you don't become that person at the end of the day that does not have the means to offload your product. To sit here and say that you believe the market value is going to go to zero, I'm going to tell you, that's not going to happen. And the reason that's not going to happen, because people like me are laying around with thousands of dollars, and guess what? When that product gets to the price that we're willing to buy it for, we're going to go in and scoop it up off the open market. Look at Rudy over at Alpha Investments. He's seen products go nice and low in value. And what did he do? He came through, he scooped them all up. Right now, flesh and blood is the hot commodity, and he is buying those cold foiled pressed cards off the open market at 70% of retail for anyone who wants to sell them. Do you think he cares about a market downturn? No. Okay? Because he's going to continue to buy it because that's what investors do. Real investors don't listen to people, and no disrespect to gaming channels, but they don't listen to people that aren't heavily invested within the market or have a solid understanding of the market. If you don't have a position on this commodity, if you're somebody that has none of this stuff, you don't interact with, I talk with some of the largest vendors in America right now about Pokemon. I'm working with different streamers and breakers on a regular basis. I have a large position myself. I work with local clients. I work with online clients. I advise buyers and I advise sellers. I understand this market. I, even as a amateur investor, I will not give myself more credit than that. Even as an amateur investor, you are better off getting advice from somebody like me than someone who isn't actively engaged within the market. The outside looking in, it's going to be a different perspective. And I'll tell you, if he happened to stumble across a box of XY Evolutions when they were $100 a box and threw them in his closet, they would be $1,000 a box today, and his perspective might be just a bit different. When you're on the outside looking in and you missed the train on a lot of these things, it kind of stings a little bit. But guess what? Get ready and get prepared for the next one, because another one will come someday, and hopefully you'll have the foresight and you won't wait until the market is blown up and you'll be able to get in on that one.
Even worse, the scamming economy for these collectible cards is increasing at a proportional rate to the price. When a box of cards can sell for tens, even hundreds of thousands of dollars, you will see people become increasingly innovative in their ability to steal from you. There is an entire section of this card economy based on preventing theft and evaluating packs to determine whether or not they have been opened and resealed. Thieves will find ways to perfectly shrink-wrap boxes after taking the packs and weighing them to find the minuscule discrepancies with extremely precise scales that tell them which pack contains a holographic card, and they will then replace it and steal it. We can see evidence of this as a $375,000 box was literally opened on air and had been blatantly looted and resealed. This proportional increase in crime, tandem to the market value of these cards, will cause a problem because eventually, as the finite number of existing legacy boxes, packs, and various sets dwindles, and the price progressively rises while the investors flood in still, eventually...
And there it is right there, one of the key points of the entire video, and something I wanted to touch on before I finished. This product is a consumable. And I think that is something that is so unique to this category that a lot of people seem to miss out on. This isn't like comic books or stamps or graded coins or graded paper, graded paper money. This isn't like any of those. This isn't like Tiffany lamps. This is like none of those. People take these cards, these sealed booster boxes, they take a sealed booster box and they just rip it open. Okay? They consume the product. They go through the packs. If you're holding sealed product, that is a consumable, diminishable product. There is less of it on the market right from the moment you started watching this video to where we are at now. I guarantee you there's somewhere in the area of 100 to 1,000 less sealed booster boxes available in the world right now, because people are doing live stream breaks. The cards that I've shipped out and the thousands of other resellers have shipped out, they're getting opened every hour. Opened up, and we have a true supply and demand situation. The product is getting consumed, and that's why prices are skyrocketing, because guess what? Product is getting consumed faster than the amount of available supply. We've never seen this before with Pokemon, to where there's so many people who are buying, and guess what? Those who had foresight, hello, I am foresight. We have made a lot of money. And those who have worked with me and said, Jay, I like your foresight. I like the way you think. You make some very valid points about why this box is going to be worth a lot of money. They have also made a lot of money. So here's the thing. He talks about counterfeits. How do you mitigate your risk? Step one, don't buy a $375,000 box of cards without doing exactly what they did. Live cameras, having experts in the room, making sure that things are properly authenticated, yada, yada, yada. Okay? You got to make sure your goods are authentic. How do you mitigate this risk? One, don't buy really expensive stuff. Okay, that's the best thing you can do. Stay away from boxes that are in the several $1,000s range. Sure, they can be better investment quality goods. They can be a blue chip investment. Sure, but you're taking on a higher level of risk. Make sure you understand your supply chain. Okay, If you're buying from somebody who's got thousands of dollars worth of cards and you want to make sure they're authentic, ask them, where'd you get them from? What distributor did you get them from? Do you have an invoice for this order? Okay. Make sure you're working with reputable vendors. I can document almost all of the product that I have, exactly what warehouse it came from. I have all of my invoices. I can furnish proof on my goods anytime I need to. And I have so much of the stuff, and my reputation is out there, and I'd have so much to lose by even shifting a single bad card. It would never be worth it to me. This is a piece of life advice for you. Always be careful with people who have nothing to lose. Okay? That means that all they have is to gain, and you're more likely to get scammed by them. If a deal seems too good to be true, it probably is. I have charged back and refunded out through eBay close to $6,000 worth of counterfeit orders on eBay over the last 60 days. And I'm fortunate that I'm able to make a $2,000 buy at a really great price and then see that it was a scammer using a fake tracking number, which you'll see here on one of my shows coming up here in the future, and be able to get all my money back. Okay. But if you're not careful and you make an in real life buy off somebody and then you end up getting home and you open up your packs and they're full of playing cards, okay, instead of Magic or Pokemon cards, then yes, you can get burned. Mitigate your risk. Protect your supply chain, know who you're buying from. Even with the sealed booster boxes, you have to know what you're doing. If it's too good to be true, it most likely is.
The ratio of legitimate to fraudulent merchandise on the market will reach toxic levels. This is a compounding problem because as the pandemic recedes, the excess cash flow for many investors, not collectors, investors, will dry up. Some of them will begin attempting to sell, which creates downward pressure on the price, and this will increase exponentially as we move into an actual recession.
Now, here's the thing. The market can absorb quite a bit right now. There is a lot of people who are hoping that prices come down on stuff with the intent to purchase more product when it does. We will see some sets get reprinted, and the market's going to absorb those. Shiny Fates is coming out in just a couple of weeks. The market's going to absorb that. Battle Styles is going to come out in March. The market is going to absorb that. There is more than enough dollars to absorb a 10 or 20% downturn in the market. People want the product. It will get soaked up.
Meanwhile, the volume of fraudulent packs will lag behind this pressure and remain disproportionately large for a decent period of time because the added costs associated with preventing or mitigating a potential scam, combined with the insane prices of the packs and cards themselves for a lot of different sets, driven up by the pandemic factors, will price out many of the remaining traditional collectors. This creates, ultimately, a glut in the market, a glut that coincides with impending financial downturn, and the effects of a glut in the market as many retail investors become increasingly pressured to sell, thus pressuring the pack, box, and card prices to fall in a peer-to-peer trade-driven ecosystem that has been rising disproportionately for months during time of financial excess, will be a perfect storm of market factors that will not just pop this bubble, they will eviscerate it.
Now, to try and predict when a market bubble will end, or even to fully determine that we're in one right now, is absolutely foolish. I want to be clear. Certain bubbles, let's say Beanie Babies for instance, can last upwards of a decade or more. Sometimes certain bubbles turn into collector's classes where there's large amounts of money held in them. Look at comic books. Okay, there was a lot of organic collectability in the beginning, and then guess what? Over time, and with the advent of graded comic books, it became a true collector's class. The same thing is happening right now. Pokemon has been a collectible card game for a very, very long time. To say that you feel that the items are going to bottom out just because the market's going to slow down a bit due to a recession? No. You have to understand, the world's money is not parked inside of Pokemon. Starbucks cups, Ray Dunn cups, Squishmallows. There's people who collect swizzle sticks, toothpicks, business cards. There's hundreds of different collectible categories. And yes, a lot of money is tied up in this category right now, but that doesn't mean it's going to crash. It's not going to crash to zero. Yes, there will be some downturn if the market takes a downturn, but guess what? There was also some movement up when the market went up due to the amount of money that was being printed.
Now, to be clear, certain sets I believe will be kind of fine. I expect that legacy first edition boxes and packs should be fairly insulated simply as a factor of how rare they are becoming, something that has accelerated in recent months, especially because the value has shot up so fast. But the downside here is that as legitimate boxes become more and more uncommon, false boxes will become increasingly common as a result, especially in those legacy sets and those first edition, different iterations. However, a huge number, dare I say a supermajority of investors in the space right now cannot afford even a fraction of a $375,000 box. They cannot even afford the $1,000 or $2,000 boxes without spending beyond their means, for most of them. Keep in mind that the majority of Americans can't even foot an unexpected $400 expense, so many of them diving into this card economy with their excess stimulus and unemployment paychecks because of COVID-19 will quite possibly be subjected to financial strain during an economic downturn, which
Again, to assume that the person that truly needs economic relief during this time is the person that is investing into these cards or investing with the intent to make a profit later is simply foolish. Yes, there are going to be a handful of people who are doing that, but a large, overwhelming majority of the people are within their means. And yes, many of us are not going to be touching $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 or $375,000 box of Pokemon cards. But guess what? Those are different collectors classes. The people who are working in $300,000 boxes have absolutely nothing to do with people like me who are working with $300 to $500 boxes. We're in a completely different arena. The guy at the flea market with 3 sleeves of comic books isn't working with the people who are working at heritage auctions selling off an Action Comics. It's not happening. They're two completely different groups of people, groups of investing classes, and guess what? They're going to be impacted differently by a downturn in the economy. Trying to bundle the two together is why I feel a lot of the argument that this gentleman is making is just simply false.
Will come directly after. And what will be the first thing that they do? Liquidate, or attempt to liquidate, the assets that they acquired in the hopes that they would mature in value. That's the $100, $200, $300 type packs and boxes, as well as the $50, $100, even $500, whatever it is, whatever it may be, type cards. That's most of the sets and cards in circulation, and those sets with a rising number of sellers, a toxic amount of fraudulent merchandise lagging behind, and a more pressing necessity to reallocate the money that is tied up in those products looming overhead because of an economic downturn will drive a catastrophic crash in the general value of these collectible cards. Here's a comparison. In Holland, during the 1600s, a certain type of tulip bulb became very popular. The price of these tulip bulbs began to increase faster and faster. Everyone wanted them, not to plant, not to collect, but to sell later down the line and make money. It got so insane that it is estimated today some bulbs were selling for an equivalent of about $750,000, I believe, while most were trading in the range of $50,000 to $150,000. These bulbs were an investment, a hefty investment, but when the bubble finally popped, and pop it did, everyone who held the bulbs simply waiting for them to rise further was forced to sell. The collapse was so severe it left many people destitute because they had been purchasing these bulbs on credit, and that's not to say that the collectible trading cards of modern day are even close to that bad or in a similar situation right now, but the effects of having an item that has no actual use or real value being sold for thousands upon thousands of dollars just to have it and then sell it later down the line, which is what an undeniably large section of the current community have been doing and are continuing to do, and that number is only growing as the price increases, that's pretty much identical. Bottom line, some of the sets and legacy cards / items from Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Magic the Gathering will retain value. Might, I guess, retain value, but even that could be false, and a large amount of them, a huge amount of them, will not retain their value. The accessible sets that most retail investors and flippers are able to access with their budget and within their means are not among those that will retain their value as efficiently, as far as I can tell. That's my opinion here. And all factors combined, the impending financial downturn will cause a market collapse that anyone in the space should be extremely cautious of. These cards are not a to the moon type situation. Don't be stupid with your money. Understand what is likely coming and make sure you accurately evaluate risk. Just because a website tells you that the card you are holding or whatever it is worth hundreds of dollars or even thousands and beyond doesn't make it true until someone actually buys them or it. And if you miss the bus, it might be a long way down and a long walk home. But that's it. You can never be too cautious, and I believe that a significant market downturn is cruising straight for the collectible card community. Be careful.
And here's the thing. you could say a significant downturn in the market is cruising towards every single collectible market. But we will see some down tracing in some collectible markets. That is natural when you have prices soar up as fast as they have. It is not natural for any collectible category to have as much movement as we've seen within Pokemon over the last 60 days. Plain and simple. There's some market manipulation going on. There's some feverish buying to try and make a quick profit going on. I'm not going to deny those factors. But some people who have been here long enough, who have been doing this as an investment, who have been working within this category long enough, we're going to be able to weather the storm. And again, if you're in a position where you are worried about the finances and the amount of money that you have tied up in Pokemon, it'd probably be a bright idea to start thinning out your portfolio of Pokemon and starting to divest and get money put into other things that might be a little bit more stable in the event of a giant downturn. But it's true. Any category at any time can downturn. I have Jellycats right here, and I have collectible art figures right here. Both of these are collecting commodities as well. Either one of those could crash completely. And I'll tell you, this isn't an uncommon thing. I mentioned stamps and I mentioned comics, but what about the collectible art figure market? There's high-end vinyl art pieces being made anywhere between a couple $100s to several $1,000s for individual pieces and their art. Okay? What about a painting on the wall? Isn't a painting no more than a piece of paper with some decoration on it that other people have agreed upon its intrinsic value? Yes, that's all it is. It's a sum of its parts if you want it to be. Sure, gold has secondary applications, but a painting and a vinyl figure, they really don't. So, everything that this guy said, and frankly, everything that I've said, take with a grain of salt. If you want to help support these videos, there's things down below, as well as a link to this guy's video if you want to watch it in full without my face talking to you. If you want to support the channel, if you want to stick around, just hit the subscribe button. That's the nicest thing that you can do for me. Again, my name is Jay Kraft with Bolarama. If you want to have a talk about Pokemon, visit my website. Send me one of those little contact us buttons. I buy, I sell, I advise, and I'd love to work with you too. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Oh, and remember, if you don't make that money, someone else will. Take care.